The arena was bigger than any city on Earth, its walls rising so high that the sky looked small above it. Thousands of lights floated in the air, shining down on a single object placed at the center. A weapon. Old, glowing, silent. They called it the Judgment Blade. No one knew who made it, no one knew how old it was, but everyone knew one thing. No one could lift it. For centuries, the strongest warriors in the galaxy had tried. Kings, champions, monsters, all had stepped forward with pride. All had failed. Today was no different. The crowd roared as another warrior entered the arena. He was huge, covered in armor made of black stone. His muscles looked like iron, his eyes burned with confidence. "This one will do it," someone shouted. "He has to," another voice said. The warrior walked to the center, each step shaking the ground. He stopped in front of the weapon and smiled. "You will be mine," he said loudly. He grabbed the handle. For a moment, nothing happened. Then his smile disappeared. His body started shaking. His arms trembled. His face twisted in pain. The glowing weapon did not move. The warrior screamed, louder and louder. His knees dropped to the ground. Cracks appeared on his armor, and then, with a final cry, he was thrown backward like a broken toy. The crowd went silent. Then, slowly, laughter spread across the arena. "Another failure," someone said. "They all fail." Another replied, one after another. Warriors came, some faster, some stronger, some smarter. All failed. Some could not even touch the weapon. Others tried and collapsed. A few fainted before even reaching it. The weapon stayed exactly where it was, calm, unmoved, waiting. Hours passed. The excitement started to fade. The crowd grew restless. "Is that all?" a voice shouted from above. "Where are the real warriors?" Then something changed. A group of guards entered from the side gate, dragging someone with them. At first, no one paid attention. They thought it was just another failed fighter. But when the figure stepped into the light, the crowd reacted. Laughter exploded. "A human? Is this a joke? They brought a human here?" The human looked small, weak, nothing like the warriors before him. His clothes were torn, his face was bruised, and his hands were chained. He said nothing. His eyes were calm, too calm. One of the guards pushed him forward hard enough to make him stumble. "Go on," the guard said with a cruel smile. "Show us what your kind can do." The crowd laughed louder. Some stood up just to watch better. "This will be quick. He won't even touch it. Humans are the weakest species." The human slowly stood straight again. He looked at the weapon, not with fear, not with excitement. Just quietly, he began to walk. Each step was slow, steady. No rush, no hesitation. The noise of the crowd started to fade, not because they stopped laughing, but because something felt strange. Different. Even the warriors who had failed before were now watching closely. The human reached the center. He stood in front of the Judgment Blade. For a moment, he did nothing. No speech, no challenge, no anger, just silence. The weapon continued to glow softly, like it was waiting. The human lifted his hand, slowly, carefully. The chains on his wrists made a soft metal sound. Someone in the crowd shouted, "Do it already, human." Another laughed. "This is embarrassing." But the human did not react. His hand moved closer to the weapon, closer, closer, until his fingers finally touched the handle. And then, everything changed. The light of the weapon flickered. The air in the arena became heavy. The laughter stopped. The warriors leaned forward. The guards stepped back without knowing why. Even the rulers watching from above stood up. The human did not move. He simply held the weapon. And for the first time in history, the Judgment Blade reacted. For a few seconds, no one moved, no one spoke, no one even breathed loudly. The human's hand rested on the handle of the Judgment Blade, and the glowing light that had stayed the same for centuries suddenly began to change. It dimmed, then grew brighter, then shifted into a deep blue color no one had ever seen before. A low sound filled the arena, not loud, but heavy, like something ancient had just awakened. The human did not react. His face stayed calm, his eyes steady. Then, slowly, he tightened his grip. The chains around his wrists made a sharp metal sound, and with no effort at all. He lifted the weapon. No shaking, no struggle, no pain. He lifted it like it weighed nothing. The ground did not crack. His body did not tremble. Nothing dramatic happened, and that was what made it terrifying, because it was too easy. The crowd stared in silence, their minds refusing to accept what they were seeing. One of the alien kings stood up from his throne, his voice shaking. "That is not possible," another whispered. "No one can lift it. No one." The warriors who had failed earlier stepped back slowly, their pride gone, replaced with fear. The human looked at the weapon in his hand, like he was seeing it for the first time. The blue light spread across the blade, moving like energy, like it was alive. Then something even stranger happened. The weapon stopped glowing. Completely. The light disappeared. The arena grew darker, colder. A deep silence filled the space again, but this time it was different. It felt like something was watching, waiting, judging. The human's fingers adjusted slightly on the handle, his grip natural, as if the weapon belonged to him. Suddenly, a sharp voice echoed across the arena. "Stop him!" The command came from above, from one of the rulers, panic clear in his voice. The guards reacted instantly. Dozens of them rushed toward the human, weapons ready. But before they could reach him, something invisible pushed them back. Not violently, not like an attack, but like a warning. They slid across the ground, unable to get closer. The human did not even look at them. He simply stood there, holding the blade. The blue light returned, stronger now, wrapping around his arm like a living force. The warriors in the arena began to whisper, fear growing in every voice. "This is wrong. He is not chosen. This is a mistake. The weapon is broken." But deep inside, they all knew. The weapon was not broken. It had finally found someone. The human took a small step forward, and the ground beneath him responded. Not breaking, not shaking, but changing. The surface became smooth, almost like glass, reflecting the blue light of the blade. Every eye followed him, every movement felt important. He stopped again. Then something happened that no one expected. The human spoke. Not loudly, not with anger, just one quiet word. "What is this?" The moment his voice faded, the weapon answered. Not out loud, not for everyone, only for him. A voice filled his mind, deep, ancient, calm. "You have awakened me." The human's eyes narrowed slightly, but his face stayed calm. Around him, the arena was silent again. No one else heard the voice, but they could feel something was wrong. Very wrong. Above, the rulers began to panic. "We must stop this," one said. "He cannot be allowed to live." Another replied. Orders were sent quickly, secretly, hidden weapons activated, snipers locked their targets, energy cannons powered up, all aimed at one human, but the human stood still, listening. "What are you?" he asked quietly. The voice inside him answered again. "I am judgment." A pause, then the voice continued, slower this time, heavier. "And you are the first who can carry it." The human's grip on the weapon tightened slightly. For the first time, something changed in his expression. Not fear, not excitement, something deeper, understanding. Around him, the danger was building. Weapons ready to fire, rulers desperate to erase what they had just seen. But the human did not move. He only listened. And then the voice said something that made everything even more dangerous. The words stayed in the human's mind, heavy and clear. "You will become the end of them all." For a moment, he said nothing, his eyes fixed on the blade, his breathing slow, controlled. Around him, The arena was no longer just watching. It was waiting. The rulers above exchanged nervous looks. Their confidence was gone now, replaced with fear they could not hide. "Fire!" one of them whispered, his voice shaking. And suddenly, everything exploded into action. Bright energy shots filled the air, cutting through the silence, aimed directly at the human. The crowd screamed and moved back, chaos spreading across the arena. But the human did not run. He did not raise the weapon. He did not even turn. The attacks reached him in a flash. And stopped. Right in front of him, frozen in the air, like time itself had slowed down. The energy beams flickered, struggling, unable to move forward. Then, slowly, they faded away, disappearing like they had never existed. A wave of shock moved through the arena. That's impossible," someone said. The human finally lifted his head slightly, his eyes calm, but now something deeper was there, something heavier. Inside his mind, the voice returned. "They cannot harm you now." The human spoke quietly. "Why me?" There was no anger in his voice, no pride, only a simple question. The answer came slowly, like it had waited a long time to be spoken. "Because you endured." The human's fingers tightened around the weapon. "Others were strong," the voice continued. "Others had power, speed, control." A short pause, but none of them survived what you did. For the first time, something moved in the human's eyes. A memory, a shadow of the past. The arena around him began to fade from his focus as images filled his mind. Cold nights, empty streets, hunger that never ended. War, noise, fire, loss, people gone, voices silent, pain that never stopped. He saw himself, younger, weaker, alone, still standing, still moving forward, still surviving. The voice spoke again, deeper now. "This weapon does not choose strength. It chooses those who carry pain and keep walking." Back in the arena, the rulers were shouting orders, louder now, desperate. "Use everything," one screamed. "Do not let him leave that place." Heavy weapons rolled into position, massive cannons aimed at the center. The ground trembled again, not because of power, but because of fear. The warriors who once stood proud now stepped back. None of them wanted to be close anymore. The human slowly came back to the present, his eyes opening fully. His face was still calm, but now it was different. Now he understood. "You knew this would happen," he said softly. "Yes," the voice replied. "You were waiting." "Yes, for someone like me." A pause, then the final answer, "For the only one like you." The human looked at the weapon again, the blue light now steady, strong, almost breathing. "Then tell me," he said, "what happens now?" The voice did not answer immediately. Instead, the weapon reacted. The light around it expanded, spreading across the ground, climbing into the air, wrapping around the human like a silent storm. The temperature dropped. The air became heavy again. Even the rulers stopped speaking, watching in fear. Then the voice returned, clearer than before. "If you accept me fully, there is no turning back." The human's grip did not loosen. You will not be human in their eyes. Silence. You will become judgment. Another pause. And they will fear you, as they once made your kind feel fear. The human closed his eyes for a second. Just 1 second. Not to think, but to remember. Everything. When he opened them again, they were calm. But now there was something else inside them. Not anger, not hatred. Something colder, something certain. Above him, the largest weapon in the arena finished charging, its energy brighter than anything before. "This will end it," one ruler said, forcing confidence into his voice. The weapon fired. A massive beam of energy rushed toward the human. Stronger than all attacks before combined, the entire arena shook as it moved, destroying everything in its path. But the human did not move. He simply stood there, holding the blade, and then He raised it. For the first time, the beam hit the blade directly. Light exploded across the arena, blinding everyone for a moment, and when the light faded, the beam was gone. Completely gone. Not blocked, not deflected, erased. The silence that followed was deeper than anything before. Even fear could not describe what they felt now. The human lowered the weapon slowly. Inside his mind, the voice spoke one final time. The question stayed in the human's mind, cold and clear. Will you destroy them, or make them remember? He did not answer. Not yet. The arena was no longer loud, no longer proud. It had become something else, something smaller. Fear had taken over. Above, the rulers were no longer arguing. They were panicking. "This is out of control," one said, his voice low but shaking. "We should have killed him earlier," another replied. "No more delays, and this now." Orders moved fast through hidden channels, faster than before. This time, they were not testing him. They were trying to erase him. Deep under the arena, ancient systems began to wake up, systems that had not been used for centuries. Locked doors opened, heavy machines moved, energy levels rose beyond safe limits. Back in the arena, the human stood still, the blue light of the weapon flowing around him like a quiet storm. He could feel it now. Not just the weapon, but everything around him. Every movement, every fear, every intention. "They are afraid," he said softly. "Yes," the voice replied. "They should be." The human's eyes moved slowly across the arena, watching the warriors step back, watching the guards hesitate. None of them looked strong anymore. None of them looked powerful. They looked small, the same way humans once looked to them. A low rumble spread across the ground, deeper than before. The arena floor began to open, slowly at first, then faster. Massive structures rose from below. Metal towers, rotating weapons, glowing cores of energy. The crowd screamed and moved away, climbing over each other to escape. Even the warriors who once stood with pride now ran without looking back. "They are activating everything," someone shouted. "He cannot survive this." Above, the rulers watched with desperate hope. Even if he is chosen, no one can survive full system fire. The human did not move. He simply watched. The weapon in his hand pulsed once, then again, as if it was breathing with him. "They are not stopping," he said quietly. "They will not," the voice answered. "Then they have already chosen." The human took one step forward. The ground responded instantly, the glass-like surface spreading further, pushing back the broken arena floor. The rising machines paused for a second, their systems reacting to something they did not understand. Then they fired, all at once, dozens of beams, missiles, energy waves, everything they had. The sky disappeared under the attack. Light covered everything. Sound became a single endless roar. From the outside, it looked like nothing could survive inside that storm. But inside, the human stood in silence. The weapon lifted slightly in his hand, not by effort, but by will. The blue light expanded, faster, stronger, forming a barrier around him. The attacks hit and vanished. Not slowly, not with resistance. They simply stopped existing, one by one. Every weapon failed, every attack disappeared. The storm ended. The arena was still, and the human was untouched. A deep silence followed, heavier than before. The rulers stared in disbelief. Their final plan had failed. "That was everything," one whispered. "There is nothing left." Below, the machines shut down one by one, powerless, useless. The human lowered the weapon slightly, his eyes now moving upward toward the rulers. For the first time, he was not just reacting. He was choosing. "They cannot stop you," the voice said. "I know," the human replied. "They will try again. I know." A pause. "Then why do you wait?" the voice asked. The human's expression did not change, but something inside him had shifted. Not anger, not revenge, something colder, something stronger. "Because they don't understand yet," he said. At that moment, the weapon reacted again. The blue light changed, growing darker, deeper, more intense. Lines of energy moved across the blade, forming patterns that had never appeared before. The air around him bent slightly, like space itself was adjusting. Even the rulers felt it, a pressure they could not escape. "What is happening now?" one of them said, panic rising again. No one answered, because no one knew. The human lifted the weapon a little higher, his movement slow, controlled. The entire arena seemed to respond. Walls cracked, lights flickered, systems failed. Not from attack, but from presence. From him, the voice spoke again, quieter now, but more serious than ever. "This is your final step. If you go forward, there is no return." The human looked at the blade, then at the broken arena, then at the terrified rulers above. For a moment, everything was still. Then he spoke, calm, clear, his voice carrying across the entire arena. They made their choice. A pause. "Now I will make mine." The weapon pulsed one more time, stronger than ever before, and then it began to change. The moment the human made his choice, the arena felt it. Not like sound, not like light, but like something deeper, something ancient. The judgment blade began to change in his hand. The blue light that once flowed softly now grew sharp, brighter, stronger. Lines of energy moved across the surface of the weapon, forming patterns no one could understand. The blade itself started to shift, its shape no longer fixed. It stretched, then narrowed, then split into layers of glowing energy. It was no longer just a weapon. It was becoming something else, something alive. The human did not move. He did not react. He simply allowed it. The voice returned, but now it was different, stronger, clearer, almost complete. "You have accepted," it said. The human's grip remained steady. "Yes," he answered quietly. The air around him bent again, stronger this time. The ground beneath his feet cracked, not from force, but from pressure, from presence. Above, the rulers stepped back without thinking. "What is he doing?" one asked, fear clear in his voice. "He is not just holding it anymore," another replied. "He is becoming part of it." The warriors who had once filled the arena were now gone, hiding, escaping. None of them wanted to be seen. None of them wanted to exist in this moment. The human slowly lifted his head, his eyes no longer just calm. Now they carried something deeper, not anger, not hate, something heavier, something that made even the strongest rulers feel small. The weapon moved with him, not as an object but as an extension of his will. The blue light spread outward, covering more of the arena. Walls dissolved into dust, machines shut down completely. Nothing could remain unchanged near him. "They are afraid," the human said again. "Yes," the voice replied. "They understand now." The human took a step forward, and this time the arena did not respond. It surrendered. The ground smoothed instantly. The broken structures vanished into nothing. Everything in his path cleared without resistance. Above, the rulers tried to regain control. "Activate the final protocol," one shouted. "We cannot let him leave." Hidden deep within the system, one last command was triggered. Not a weapon, not an attack. A lockdown. Massive energy walls began to form around the arena, sealing every exit. A cage, designed to trap anything inside, no matter how powerful. The walls rose quickly, glowing with intense energy. The rulers watched with desperate hope. "He cannot escape that," one said. "Nothing can break those barriers." The human stopped walking. He looked around slowly, observing the walls as they closed in. The weapon pulsed once. Then again, The voice spoke softly. "They still think in limits." The human's expression did not change. "They always did," he replied. The energy walls completed their formation, sealing the arena completely. From the outside, it looked like a perfect prison. From the inside, it felt like pressure, heavy and constant. The human stood at the center, surrounded, contained. For a moment, nothing happened. The rulers waited, watching closely. "Now we see what he really is," one whispered. The human raised the weapon slightly. Not in attack, not in defense, just raised it. The blade reacted instantly, the blue light turning deeper, darker, almost black at its core. The air cracked. A sound like glass breaking filled the arena. Not loud, but sharp. The energy walls flickered, just for a second. The rulers froze. "No, that's not possible." The human took one more step forward. The weapon moved with him, and the walls moved back. Not broken, not destroyed. They simply could not stay close to him. They were being pushed away by his presence alone. The cage was no longer holding him. It was avoiding him. The human stopped again, looking up at the rulers. For the first time, there was something new in his eyes. Not anger, not revenge, authority, not given, not earned, but absolute. "They made these walls," he said quietly. "Yes," the voice replied, "and now they will see what they cannot control." The human lifted the weapon higher. The arena shook, not violently but deeply, like something inside it was breaking apart. The walls flickered again, stronger this time, cracks of light running across their surface. The rulers stepped back, fear turning into panic once again. "Stop him!" one shouted, though no one moved. "Do something!" another cried. But there was nothing left to do. The human was no longer part of their system, no longer bound by their rules, no longer something they could understand. He stood alone, and yet. Above all, the voice spoke one more time, calm, certain. "You are not chosen." A pause. "You were always the only one worthy." The human's grip tightened slightly, his eyes fixed forward, and in that moment, the truth became clear, not just to him, but to everyone watching. This was never about strength, never about power. It was about survival, and no one had survived like humans. The weapon pulsed one final time, stronger than ever before, and the arena itself began to change. The arena was no longer just a place. It felt like something between reality and memory. The walls flickered, the ground shimmered, and the air itself seemed unstable. The judgment blade in the human's hand was no longer just glowing. It was showing images, not through screens, not through projection, but directly into the minds of everyone present. The rulers froze as the first vision appeared, a burning world, cities falling, ships breaking apart in the sky. Not alien ships, human ships. The human's eyes narrowed slightly, but he did not look away. The voice inside him grew quieter, heavier. "Now you remember," it said. The vision shifted. A second scene. Humans kneeling in chains, surrounded by alien forces, forced into silence, forced into labor, forced into extinction zones. The crowd in the arena began to panic. Some screamed, some tried to run, but there was nowhere left to go. The arena itself was holding them in place now, not by force, but by truth. The human stood still, watching everything. Each image was familiar, not because he had seen them here, but because he had lived them. The voice spoke again. "You were not the first experiment. You were not the first species tested. You were the last to survive them." The vision shifted again. A massive council chamber, the same rulers from the arena, younger, more powerful, discussing something in ancient language. "Erase them," one had said in the memory. "They adapt too fast." Another had replied, "They feel too deeply." A third voice added, "And that makes them dangerous." The memory faded, and silence followed. The human's grip on the weapon tightened slightly, but his face remained calm. Now everything was clear. The Judgment Blade was not a weapon built for war. It was built for evaluation, for judgment, and humanity had been judged and survived. The voice inside him became softer now, almost like it was remembering too. "They erased your history," it said. "They erased your name. But they could not erase what you became." The human finally spoke, his voice low. "So I was never chosen." A pause. "I was remembered." The weapon responded instantly, "Yes." The arena shook again, but this time it was not from attack or power. It was from collapse. The truth was breaking the system itself. Above, the rulers were no longer just afraid. They were exposed. Everything they had done, every decision, every destruction, every lie, was now visible to everyone in the arena. "No," one ruler whispered, stepping back. "This cannot be shown." Another said, panic rising fast, "Cut the connection." A third screamed, but there was no connection left to cut. The Judgment Blade had already taken control. The human looked up slowly, watching them. For the first time, they were no longer above him, no longer hidden, no longer untouchable. They were just people, the same ones who had built empires on silence and fear, the same ones who had erased entire species. The vision shifted again, this time showing the last human city, burning quietly under alien rule. No resistance left, no weapons left, only survivors trying to hide. The human's eyes softened for a moment, not with sadness, but with understanding. He was not the last because he was weak. He was the last because he refused to stop moving. The voice inside him spoke one final truth. They thought extinction was the end. But they forgot something. The human asked quietly, "What?" A pause. "That humans do not end. They adapt." The arena grew silent again. Even the rulers stopped breathing for a moment. The Judgment Blade changed once more, its form stabilizing, becoming sharper, more complete. Not just a weapon anymore, not just a judge, but a record of everything that had been hidden. The human lowered his head slightly, processing everything. Then he spoke. "Why show me this now?" The voice answered, "Because now you understand what you are holding." The human looked at the blade again, not as a tool, not as a weapon, but as a responsibility. Around him, the arena was breaking apart, systems failing, illusions collapsing, truth replacing control. The rulers tried one last time to speak, but their voices no longer carried authority. They were just echoes now. The human finally turned his gaze fully toward them, and in that moment, everything stopped. No movement, no sound, no resistance, only truth remained, and the weapon in his hand pulsed softly, as if waiting for the final choice. The arena was silent, not because it was empty, but because everything that could make noise had already broken inside it. Lights flickered weakly, systems were collapsing one by one, and the Judgment Blade was now the only stable force in the entire structure. The human stood at the center, holding it calmly, like it was part of him. Above, the rulers no longer spoke with authority. They whispered instead, afraid of even their own voices. The final question still lingered in the air, heavy and unavoidable. Not spoken again, but felt everywhere. The weapon was waiting, not for strength, not for command, but for decision. The human slowly looked around, at the broken arena, at the terrified rulers, at the remnants of systems that once controlled entire civilizations. Everything he saw was built on fear, and now that fear had nowhere left to hide, inside his mind the voice spoke softly. "They are waiting for your judgment." The human replied quietly, "I am not like them." A pause followed. Then the voice answered, "That is why you were chosen." The human lowered the blade slightly, not out of weakness but understanding. For a moment he closed his eyes, and everything went still inside him. No rage, no pain, no confusion, only memory. He saw Earth again, not the destroyed parts, but the small moments. People laughing, children playing, voices talking in streets, small lives living without knowing the galaxy above them even existed. He saw survival, not as glory, but as constant struggle, and he understood something very clearly now. Power was never the goal, survival was. When he opened his eyes again, they were calm, but firm. The judgment blade reacted immediately, sensing his decision. The blue light spread across the arena one last time. Not violent, but absolute. Every system froze, every hidden weapon shut down, every escape route sealed or opened depending on his will. The rulers above stepped back instinctively, but there was nowhere left to retreat. One of them finally spoke, voice broken. "What are you going to do?" The human looked up at them. For a long moment he said nothing. Then he spoke, clearly. "I am not your punishment." A pause. "I am your consequence." The arena shook slightly at those words, not from force, but from meaning. The judgment blade lifted on its own now, responding fully to his will. The voice inside it spoke for the last time. "Then it is decided." The human nodded slightly. "Yes." But instead of destruction, something unexpected happened. The blade's light expanded outward, not as a weapon, but as a wave, a signal, across the arena, across the system, across every channel connected to it. The truth began to spread. Not just what they had done, but what they had hidden. Every record, every erased species, every destroyed world, every silent war, it was all exposed. The rulers panicked instantly, trying to stop the transmission, but it was already beyond their control. "This is not destruction," one of them whispered in horror. "This is exposure," another said. The human watched quietly as their power disappeared in real time, not through violence, but through truth. For the first time, they were powerless not because they were defeated, but because they were seen. The judgment blade settled back into a stable form in his hand, its purpose fulfilled. The voice inside it grew quieter. "You did not destroy them," it said. The human replied softly. "No. I showed them." A pause. "And now they will live with it." The arena systems finally shut down completely, lights fading, structures collapsing slowly into dust, but the human stood untouched in the center of it all. Above, the rulers no longer felt like rulers. They felt like survivors of their own truth. One by one, they began to lower their heads, not in respect but in realization. The human turned slightly, looking at the emptying arena, and for the first time, he felt no weight. Not because everything was solved, but because everything was clear. The judgment blade spoke one final time, not as a command, not as judgment, but as understanding. You are not their end. A pause. You are their beginning. The human looked at the blade one last time, then slowly lowered it completely. The blue light faded gently, no longer needed. The arena was now quiet, broken, and open to the truth it could no longer hide. As he walked forward, the ground no longer reacted, no longer changed. It simply accepted him. Behind him, the rulers remained in silence, watching the one human who had not destroyed them, but changed everything. And as he left the center of the arena, one final thought remained in the air. Not spoken, but understood by all.